Hello and welcome to Expaterience. In this fresh initiative, we bring niche, rich and refreshing conversation revolving around two critical segments in this hyper-globalized world. First is global citizens, or we call expats, and the second is local community, that is the host societies. When people move and interact in a rather hectic global environment, it's no wonder, whether it's economic, social, or political, the natural outcome is conflicts and misunderstandings among competing interests. Expaterience is an open, honest, transparent, and objective effort, an attempt not only to understand this tussle, twist, and tension between these two segments, but also explores the grounds for interaction, inspiration, and integration. To have this conversation, what could be a better place than the Netherlands, which is arguably the most cosmopolitan country in the Western Hemisphere? And to discuss that, what could be a better place than Haag, or the Hague, which boasts of being the seat of Dutch government, houses intergovernmental, non-governmental organizations in multiple numbers, as well as diplomatic missions. When you roam around, you see hundreds of ethnicities talking in thousands of languages. This is just perfect blend to think about expats. Our first episode today is very special. It's focused on one key area, that is volunteer work. You might wonder, volunteer and expats in this cutthroat competition when everybody's looking for return on investment and they think in terms of monetary gains, why would one go for just volunteer work? But to my amazement, I think last week there was a news that says that in Netherlands, more than 50% people opt for volunteer work. Quite amazing, isn't it? This volunteer work is, in my opinion, is kind of like mechanism and catalyst for smoother integration, for collaborative and sustainable prosperity, where it connects, fosters growth, respect for different cultures, and long-lasting desired outcome. To discuss this, we have four very highly experienced panelists today. And I would like to introduce very quickly, and I will give just a few seconds or seconds for you to actually tell a bit more about yourself. First, we have Gert-Jan Aleman. He is the director of PEP, The Hague. I must mention this especially here. He's the person who actually conceived this concept of expaterience. If it were not for him, probably would be not having this program today. So thank you very much, Gert-Jan. I'm glad that you are joining for this very first episode. Then we have Anita. She wears multiple hats. She's a volunteer in healthcare. She's a senior researcher at university here. By training, she is a medical anthropologist and cultural sociologist. I'm sure we're going to have very different perspective from her. And then we have Matthew Beckmann from US. He's basically a copywriter and has a background in arts history. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So, and he's been expat in a couple of countries, so we'll have a fresh perspective on the theme. And last but not the least, Tetyana Benzeroual. She's I must say, a veteran as far as volunteer work is concerned. She's a project lead at Volunteer The Hague. I think what we would like is to explore three key areas. First one is the word itself, because I'm very particular about nomenclature. As I mentioned, that it's difficult to find volunteers willing to do it on a sustainable or sustained basis. So I would like to, if I could start with Gert-Jan, can you tell me what actually interests you in this field? What caused that you got associated with volunteer work? Very quickly.
Yes. Now, I think what volunteer work does, it works two ways. So it works for the people you help, but it also works for yourself because you get something back. And sometimes it's experience, sometimes it's love and attention, sometimes it's a new family. And I think the best way to deal with all the problems at the moment in the world is to give an example and to do it the other way by volunteering.
That's true. I mean, that is very obvious, connection here. Anita, if I can ask, because you have a background in anthropology, and I'm wondering, how do people view these outsiders or experts doing volunteer work? What is the point that you notice that they are accepted or rejected with the local community? Do you see any observations like that?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because when you are from outside the country and you want to integrate into a new country, you found sometimes that people don't really know you and when you are a foreigner, and then you don't speak the Dutch language that well. So and if you don't speak the Dutch language on a certain level, then the Dutch people or the local people, they sometimes think that you're, well, not very smart or not so educated. Yeah. So that's one example.
That's very constrained. Yeah. Tetyana, since you have been involved in all these projects, what roles do these expats play in your project in general or at the moment? If you can give some examples.
Of course, Volunteer at The Hague is like a platform that allows internationals like us to visit the platform and look for volunteer opportunities there. On the other end, the local Dutch nonprofits, for example, like the RTV Discus, would post their volunteer vacancies there, and then that's the time when the two worlds, so to say, would meet on the platform. Internationals would apply for these volunteer positions, and local nonprofits, they would be satisfied at having new applications coming in.
And do you also face the same kind of dilemma or confusion sometimes, whether people are rejecting, accepting, working together with the locals?
Absolutely. Back almost 10 years, not almost, like exactly 10 years ago when I started with Volunteer at The Hague, that's something that I faced personally. It was quite challenging to see that, and also to see that Volunteer at The Hague, of course, is an amazing project. But to a certain extent, it wasn't even enough to bridge that gap, the stereotypes that internationals have about locals and vice versa. So at PAPT and Haag, back then was Volunteer at The Hague, we started with a series of small events, volunteer markets, where non-profits would come, have their stand and look for volunteers among internationals. Then internationals would visit their stands and also apply for volunteer positions right there on the spot. By doing so, we tried, and so far quite well have been successful at it, we tried to bridge that gap and stereotype among local Dutch that, international, well, they don't speak Dutch, that probably they're going to come and go, like, why to bother? And then they were surprised to see, wow, it works out quite nicely. They're so enthusiastic and young and interested. And on the other end, internationals would come into these events and they were like, somebody actually needs me even if I don't speak Dutch that well. I can really contribute and make a difference in my new home. So that was fantastic to see this. And look, even this program is a good example of that, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that's a very good example. Matthew, if I can come to you for this question, because you have worked in different places. What has this volunteering work taught you about the people you worked with, the places you worked with, and the industries that you have been associated with?
Okay. I think, volunteer work puts you in a new environment that you may not otherwise have been in. So before coming to the Netherlands, I was in Italy as an international student. And I did a lot of volunteer work in Italian high schools, helping with English language education as a native English speaker. I'd go in and talk about American literature. The students were reading American novels, and I'd go in and just sort of talk to them. Sometimes the conversations drifted pretty far away from the actual literature. But it really helped me get to know, local Italian students who I otherwise never would have interacted with, and it helped me sort of understand the culture in a way that I don't think I would have had I not had that volunteer experience.
So would you say there is a distinction between doing volunteer work and this normal, regular work in the industry? And do you get the difference in terms of experience or feedback?
For me, that was definitely true because the professional work I'm doing is I'm working on the computer most of the time and I'm meeting with people over Zoom calls, so I'm not really experiencing the local culture in the same way at work as I do when I go out into the world and volunteer.
And do you choose the same domain, same type of work wherever you go, like say Italy and here? Are you doing similar kind of things or you change?
Here I'm doing more copywriting, marketing work, whereas in Italy I was more focused on my academic studies and doing stuff related to art history. So I guess I have changed.
You have changed.
Changed, but it's still, they were both very, sort of a lot of working on the computer, a lot of looking at books, not obviously interacting with people as much.
Yeah, some of the experience could be transferable and a skill set.
Yeah, a lot of writing work.
Okay. Well, if, as I understand this, talking or thinking about integration, it's not about going to a place, doing something and you are integrated. It's a kind of like a long process. So maybe given your background, Tetyana, what are those systems or practices that have worked well in bringing these expats into the fold, the projects that you have been doing, so that you can ensure that actually, this would lead to a further better integration, not just like a temporary one?
I'm quite passionate about volunteering myself, and I've lived in a number of countries. And for me, almost like a blueprint became, in a way, volunteering. So when you land in a new country, then first of all, you put all the support network behind. Your family, most likely, is left behind. You really have to start from scratch. In a way, you need to rediscover yourself, who you are, and you do this through the eyes of others. When you're at home, when you don't expose yourself to many new challenges, when you don't step out of your comfort zone, it's quite challenging to rediscover yourself within the new country. Mm-hmm. Volunteering allows that at the list of energy resources. So you don't really need to spend that much amount of energy and time as you would, for example, to find a paid position. Or even sometimes to go out and find new friends, because to build friendships. To build new friendships, it also takes time. Yeah. So with volunteering, what's really quite amazing is that there is a way to integrate yourself in a local society. And integrating yourself in a local society sounds a bit technical, but it's more than that. Like Gert-Jan mentioned at some point, you almost can find a new family. That would happen to me at Pab Den Haag. Some people recently said, well, Tetyana, you're there for 10 years. Don't you want something new? Well, there's always been something new, different projects thrown at me. And Pab Den Haag, in a way, did become my family. That's not just a family, also the support network. There's just so much that we can do within the volunteer work that we would not normally be able to do quite often, as Matthew said, in a paid position as well.
You just mentioned because you have worked in different countries. Mm-hmm. So can you give just like snapshot of which ethnicities, which group, which languages you used or you interacted with in?
I've used my native language, Ukrainian language.
You're from Ukraine, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I also used Russian language, which is my second language. I also used English language mostly. There were times that I had to exercise also my French skills. Okay. And many different cultures that were in the environment that I worked with. I wouldn't even count all of them, because U.S. and Canada, they're quite melting pots and yes, and tossing salads when it comes to that. So the experience was quite amazing.
That's right. Anita, once again to you about, this time the sociological perspective. In general, even if we see two brothers differ in opinion and ideas, within family there are conflicts. And here you're handling the cultural misunderstandings. What are those observations in which you see that the volunteers find it difficult to, adjust and acclimatize in a foreign environment?
Yeah, well, just imagine you are trained as a doctor or a nurse. And you start living, you worked in a hospital already for many years. And then something happened. For example, you are from Ukraine or you are from Syria, and you had to leave the country because of war. And then when you arrive to the Netherlands, you actually want to start with your life again. And then you find all these barriers because there's a lot of difficulties that you experience because the Dutch healthcare system, or the Dutch system in general, is quite complicated. You need to find your information, you need to find your way, you need to speak the language. So there are lots of restrictions and rules that you need to solve all your struggles to get into the work environment that you actually love. So what I experience is that the volunteering work can help you to learn the language, because there's also a lot of distance between the local people and we call it expats, but we can also call it refugees or newcomers. We have lots of words how to frame people from different countries. And it's actually quite interesting, because if you look at all these different names that we put on people, but we are all people. And if people would like to care for each other, then it's a pity that they can't find a way to this work environment. So, and it is also based because it's so complicated.
And since you are in the, actually I was curious about if you could, for the benefit of our viewers, define what exactly is a medical anthropologist. What are the areas that you focus in that?
Yeah, with medical anthropology, it's more that you get knowledge about all the health and sickness that people experience overseas, so in other countries as well, and how that works out in on the local. So how do global experiences regarding health and sickness, how does that infect the cultures and the local cultures?
Oh, I see.
So this is like medical anthropology.
Oh, that's interesting. So would you have some kind of like examples from COVID-related incidents in your, observations?
Yeah, well, that's a good example, because if you look at the COVID epidemic, then people experience overseas also the different rules and regulations. So then you actually notice that, well, for example, in China, people are still have their mouth cap in front of their face.
Yeah.
So this is like a common aspect of cultural differences. So there are lots of cultural differences related to health.
That's a very interesting example, because I remember in Japan, even in the like normal times, they put on masks.
Yeah.
When there is a winter, or because many tend to be afraid of the catching cold thing. So they even though they didn't have the lockdown, yet many people were actually putting the mask.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time I was in India, and it's very strange to imagine that for 2.5 years I did not come out of my home. Thanks to information technology, that your groceries and shopping things, everything is possible at home. But it went to that extent that we were afraid of where the cylinder would come from, if the cylinder is there, oxygen is there or not, if the oxygen cylinder is there, or the beds are there or not. So that has its impact on people.
Yeah, it has an impact, but on the other way, the healthcare system, it can be different, but it's also a lot of similarities. So what I'm trying to do is to connect the international care workers to the local healthcare environments, the hospitals or the nursing pathways, to support them, that they can find their way, because now we have lots of international healthcare workers who are working in greenhouses, for example, or in supermarkets, because they can't find a way to the Dutch environment. So that's a pity, I would say. So I really think that we need to create an inclusive environment, and that we can learn from each other, even that there are a lot of differences.
I think then the same question which I just posed to Tetyana about the systems and practices to bring these people in the fold.
Yeah.
That has to be peculiar and particular for this healthcare sector. You just mentioned because you are working with the internationals as well. So have you been working with the hospitals outside Netherlands or other nationalities inside Netherlands?
Well, myself, I have my personal experiences. I've been working in a hospital in Botswana, that's in Africa, for a couple of years.
I see.
And I worked in a hospital in the United Arab Emirates as well.
Oh.
So, and that was not very complicated. I mean, I was just having my diploma translated into English, and I could just enter the hospital and get my work experiences. But the other way around, it's very complicated.
The legalization of the documents, etc.
Yeah, legalization of the documents. You need to learn. You need to not only learn the Dutch language, but you need also the medical terminology. You need to have more language, courses based on the Dutch healthcare system. You need to have a registration for your profession. So it's all different steps that you need to take. And many international care workers from overseas, when they want to work in the Netherlands, they just quit.
Yeah.
Because it's so complicated, and then I will go and work in the supermarket. So
it sounds much more trickier than inburgering, which is to everybody's horror, and the kind of questions they ask in K&M and so on. So I can understand in the specialized fields it must be far more complicated. Gert-Jan, how is your experience working with foreigners?
I will say very good. I always call them internationals because you talked about the name of it. I think with Pep Den Haag we use international because it's the spectrum. I think it's very interesting because what I see with internationals are that they're very, very willing to help in the city to people. Mostly they're very high educated. It's not that we ask, but that's what we get in The Hague. And they're very motivated to work. There are results of what do you call it? Certain. There were results of that, and they show that the internationals having more time to work as a volunteer than Dutch people. So it's very interesting, and I think this is today is for me something what is very special because it was an idea. I challenged the top 5 of RTV Discus to make something with internationals. And today it's born.
It has come to fruition.
Perfect. But the thing is that just before when we were here, we took a cup of coffee with the colleagues here, and they say it's so interesting. It was a Dutch RTV Discus girl. She said, it's so very interesting. We learn so much because they are so very educated. Maybe more than we are. And that's so beautiful, perfect to hear because we can learn from each other.
That's
from cultures, from education, and that's where it's all about for me.
True. If you look at Matthew's profile, he has a background in arts, history. I'm just wondering if you can just throw some light on your background and how it has helped you or shaped you in connecting with the people during your volunteer work.
Okay, interesting question. I studied art history in Rome, Italy, which is a great place to study art history. Much beauty there. And then, of course, I've sort of, with my professional career, morphed more into marketing. I do search engine optimization, marketing, and copywriting. But I think on a professional level, it's sort of helped me to think visually. And then to touch more on your question, like how does it help me connect to people? I always love talking about art. I have a museum card here.
Okay.
And I love exploring Dutch history and I mean the amazing artistic tradition here. And whenever friends want to hang out, I'm always suggesting that we go to a museum. And at the museums, I like talking to the staff, and it's just I'm very passionate about art and history, and that helps me connect with both internationals and locals who also share that passion.
Yeah, sometimes these the creative ideas could also be actually facilitating the bridge building between the people, because humanities and social science, though we don't really juxtapose them reasonably with the, as far as STEMs are concerned, science technology, but I think in today's world, which is laden with the rift and conflicts, it's very important to have that background. You can look back,
and it reminds you that the world has always been international. Like,
exactly.
So much of these of art history is about artists, traveling between cultures and finding inspiration from other traditions.
Absolutely. Actually, this brings to the next segment, which could be very interesting to reflect on. I was thinking about expats or the foreigners, why people actually leave their home. And there is a nice poem, says home. I don't remember verbatim, but it says that people don't like to leave their home unless the home becomes the mouth of a shark. So that means nobody wants to leave the comfort of home unless situations are pretty difficult. So one is that there's a crisis or climatic conditions which propels people, and that's the refugees and all these migrants. Another category is of people who seek kind of growth, because mobility is a part of life. I mean, I keep joking that what differentiates honey from other sugar substitutes is because the mobility, the bee bird has to, honeybee has to fly from different, flowers, different gardens to get the best of the best. Mm-hmm. And probably, another analogy could be the Silicon Valley, right? The collective where the best mind comes. So it's very important. When you have integration, then we can actually be sure of collective prosperity. Because whether you take the example of Spinoza, who said God is nature, nature is God, or you talk about Anaxagoras, he said my home is the whole universe, or you take even the Indian philosophy, non-dualism, that we say in Sanskrit, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, the whole earth is my home. So ultimately we are connected with each other. It's in this context, two words, mutually beneficial and collective prosperity. How do you define, Anita, these two words?
Well, that's, you can actually just mutual, for example, this mutual, how was it pronounced? Mutual experience.
Mutual beneficial,
yeah,
mutually beneficial.
Yeah, but I would actually, that's in an ideal world. We really like to have this mutual and equal ground, but most of the time it's not so equal. So as a medical anthropologist, actually I noticed that people like to travel, and people like to also sometimes like to have a better life. So for example, the labor migrants, they might come to the Netherlands because they have more benefits, for example. But then when they arrive to the Netherlands, they don't really have the same equal chances, the opportunities that the local people have because of all the things that I just mentioned. So I really think that we need to work on more equal ground in the Netherlands as well, to be more inclusive. So that means that locals need to meet the internationals, exchange their cultural habits and their experiences overseas, so they can learn from each other, so that they can create a platform. Well, you have already a platform that they can actually exchange things. So this is an example that we need that we need to provide.
Right, Matthew. How would you define these two terms?
Remind me the two terms again.
Yeah. So mutually beneficial and collective prosperity.
Okay. It's a good question. I guess, collective prosperity, it's sort of like the utilitarian concept of, the best for everyone. Obviously, collective prosperity probably involves some people not getting exactly what they want, but making certain sacrifices for the benefit of the entire community. And then, that's sort of like mutual. You have to find win-win situations. It's not, you want to get out of like this zero-sum mentality where like anything that's bad for you, for one group, is good for another group. Like, you want to create a non-zero-sum game where you find those win-win solutions to build up the entire
That's
community.
what also Anita mentioned about this patronizing old mentality, like one is giver, other is receiver, or somebody is savior. This needs to change in order to have or come on the same pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to define differently?
I would like to add to this.
Sure.
Because when we talk about internationals and locals, there's what I've noticed after a number of years being here and being an international myself, there's always this kind of underlying question, and sometimes it's not even underlying, but just thrown in my face, for how long are you here? Mm-hmm. And I think this is one of the first stereotypes that we need to battle in order to start being more inclusive, is that locals will start to understand a little bit more than internationals here to stay. It's lovely, it's nice in the Netherlands. There was even a survey done shortly after Corona that showed that 72% of internationals, they choose this country as their new home. We're here to stay.
Yeah.
It's lovely. What is there not to like here? The work-life balance. The locals are welcoming to the extent if you want to see that welcome inside of them. If I want to focus on the negative parts, I will only see negative parts around me. True. Even I lived in Canada before that, in Toronto, beautiful city, but the weather is somewhat different here. So when I came to the Netherlands, they're like, oh yeah, the weather. I'm like, no, I love it. I love it. There is no winter here. Awesome. Then I go to the summer part. Oh, okay, there is no summer here there. Oh, well, but if that's the price to pay for not having winter, I'm all right with that. So it's the positive attitude. It's, in addition to the positive attitude, it's staying curious, being open by both local and internationals to see the best in both parts. And when it comes to win-win situations, if both parties are invested in seeing the best in each other and staying curious, then what is there to stop them? Then we can have that utopian flourishing society maybe one day. But what is the likelihood of that, huh?
True. Gert-Jan, what are your hopes or expectations from expats that you see in terms of their integration or their being like equipped with, to work well side by side with the locals?
With the locals. I hope that we can learn a lot from each other. What I have a little bit of the conversation is that internationals come here and they have to do a lot to be a little bit accepted in the Netherlands. And for me, it don't feel good anymore. I think that was the past. I think we have to be more open also as Dutch people to learn much more from the internationals. And of course it's handy to talk Dutch. We have a lot of talks about it, Tetyana and me, but it also brings a lot of other things to the table, and I think that we can use much more. And have a little bit of love to each other. Ask how it is with you. What are your difficulties? How can we solve them? To be more connected to each other. That's what my hopes are for the future.
I think that is how it should be, because I remember until very recently, when I say recently, think about last 20, 30 years, that's very recent. When we lived, we didn't really know, what the people in the other parts were doing, but we are living in the age of information technology and real-time chat. So we know exactly what is happening just this moment. It is very difficult to be unaware of, how others are feeling and yet being, happy. I remember, it's a very funny thing, but I would like to actually bring it to the discussion. We like to switch on to the news, and that's our dinner time. and then we see all these news which are not good, it makes that the taste of food not so good, you know.
Exactly.
And this is what I'm experiencing myself, because I think I have I see expats, those who have lived, breathed, and kind of like completely immersed in the country. I've lived in South Korea for 10 years. And here in Netherlands is going to be almost the same. But again, I don't speak Dutch. It's so difficult. Hopefully that would be. But yeah, you're right actually, because we need to create a platform, a system in which both can really, function well, equally.
Exactly.
Matthew, if somebody comes to you and asks what is meaningful volunteering, what kind of advice and mindset would you propose to them?
I guess there's two ways you could take that, like meaningful in how you're like contributing to society, or meaningful to you as the volunteer.
Yeah.
And of course, it's important to think both of those perspectives are important. Obviously, you want to be contributing to helping create a better world. But then it's also super important to, be doing something that's meaningful to you. Obviously, as a volunteer, you're not getting paid, so it's like you have to be getting something personally as well, like a feeling of satisfaction, new friends, a new environment that opens your mind and new perspectives. So. Yeah, you want it to be a meaningful experience.
Yeah, of course. Because you all are working with the expats, Tetyana, if I can say, are there specific ways in which these expats can actually offer new ideas and the feasibility of implementation? If you have any examples. Okay.
In our world in Volunteer the Hague and Papt in Haag, expats is a very small group of internationals.
True.
Is a more inclusive terminology in this case. So to answer the question, in the regard of the international world, in a bigger world of the Hague here, it's important for them to remain open to new experiences. In the workshops that I always give about volunteering to the internationals here, I also love to stress that it's crucial for them to know what's in it for themselves. Volunteering has this beautiful connotation that it's giving, that it's for the greater good, and it is. I do believe that, and it seems like Matthew shares that feeling, and if we go further, I think it's a common ground for most of the volunteer work, if not all of it. It gives a benefit to oneself. It can be a clear benefit, can be an admitted benefit, can be a more subtle benefit, but only if we are aware what's in it for us. Why are we doing this? What's driving us? What is the benefit that we bring, not just to others, but how does this benefit my CV? How does this benefit my integration here? What's in it for me? And being honest about it. Then we can be very successful at it, because then it's a truly mutual win-win situation.
Absolutely. I think after this, the integration process and this notion or clarification on the collective prosperity, one more key component is its sustainability. Sometimes we start projects, but after a while, it loses its, mojo. So thinking in terms of sustainability, I have two questions. One thing is that because this is something which has to be inculcated in the minds of youngsters as well. And as I just said earlier, we are so much, material success driven, and we see that everything should have a value, only the monetary value. So how in academic institutions, how should we, or academic institutions, how should they think about this very idea when teaching, learning, doing research, and serving? So maybe I can start with you, Anita.
Yeah, well, sustainability is quite important, and I think we are exactly what you're actually saying is that we are in a material world, and that we should move a little bit more in a care environment, you know, that we look after each other, and that we need to, when we are talking about voluntary work, for example, many internationals, they are able to do voluntary work, but to get into a job, it's more difficult. So I conducted also research in Germany, and all the internationals, they were able to do voluntary work in the hospitals, but then they received like a certificate that they did this practical for voluntary work, and then they could move on to another voluntary project. So, but if you want to look at the sustainability of employees and good workers, we might as well need to invest as well. So after the voluntary work, we need to give them opportunities so that they can get into the workforce on a sustainability level. So that I would say.
That's true. Matthew, do you have thoughts on it?
Can you rephrase the question again?
Say, academic institutions need to consider this, the volunteer work, when offering teaching or learning environment, so that young minds can have already this thought that it's important, it's central to our collective prosperity and flourishing. What do you think they should be actually doing in terms of institutions, as institutions?
Highlighting opportunities. I think platforms like your platform are incredibly important, because I feel like most people kind of want to volunteer, but being connected with those opportunities is a huge issue.
Knowing where to find them.
Yes. And I think, there's obviously a lot of room for institutions, universities to connect, students with potential opportunities, especially students who want to gain experience in certain fields.
Absolutely. Then the next, curiosity is about generally what happens. And if I can have my way, I would do this and that. So assume for a moment in an ideal world, if we had a full control on the resources and ability to take decisions, what one innovation would you bring in the domain of volunteer work, Tetyana?
One innovation into the volunteer work. I think that would be something language related. Because quite often I face this issues with internationals where they would like to volunteer, they value volunteer the Hague project, mainly because they don't have to have the full proficiency of Dutch language. But if there was a tool that would allow them easily in real time, of course we're getting there, we're just not there yet. I purchased recently the phone, and oh my God, the advancement there, I can almost have a real-time conversation with different languages. But once we get to the point that we can communicate, I can even use my native language, you would use your native language, and then we would still understand each other, then that would bridge that quite deep gap that is language related when you travel to different places, when we want to volunteer in different societies. Then culture will be left. Culture is a little bit easier to overcome and to be curious about versus the technical part of the language. So I would definitely vote for the technical revolution of the understanding languages each other at a real time.
What would you add,
I want to add something to Tetyana. I think when that's happening, then we get a more beautiful The Hague. We have at the moment 1,300 open vacancies for volunteering. Let's say your innovation starts tomorrow. I see a beautiful The Hague. I see more people learning, more people taking care of each other. Yeah, that would be a dream. Yeah, it would be perfect. Perfect world.
And as Gert-Jan taught me, it's always good to dream. This entire program was a dream, and hey, it came true. So maybe in a number of years or so, we'll be referring to this program like, hey, remember when we talked about this, and where we are now?
Somebody hears you here, I think.
Nice. Well, actually, it's a wonderful discussion, and I think we could continue for more time. But again, time limitations are always there. We have we're left with just 1 minute, and I would like to throw one last question, and I would like to have just very quick reaction on it. How would you explain return on investment in this sector? Because we always think, what do I get? What is in it for me? Who would like to start?
I think I can jump on this, since I was the one also talking about the benefits to oneself. Return on investment, in my understanding, would be feeling passionate about what you're doing. You're doing that for free anyway, so you might as well love what you do. Jump out of the bed, have that in a flow moment. You wake up and I want to do this. When you're not just in the bed, I don't want to go anywhere, but it's just that drive. So that would be for me.
Perfect. Matthew?
I'd say the sense of community when not only do you have that drive, but like other people are recognizing that drive that you're bringing to their community, and when you can sort of sync that with other volunteers, people you're helping, I think that's the real return on investment.
And for you, Gert-Jan?
I think also for me passion, because I think a lot of people have daily work, but it's not your passion. It's just what you learn, and the way you end up in something. You get money and there is bread on the table and it's okay. I don't have that. I have my passion in my work, but But I think a lot of people don't have that passion. And I think with volunteer work you can take the passion what you initially want.
Okay, and I come to you, Anita, with just 20 seconds.
Well, I really think that we need to care for each other, actually, and not only for your own benefits, but for the whole environment and for the society and for everyone in our community.
Thank you so much. What I gather from this discussion is the panel reminds us that the integration is not about actually just policy. There is so much more. There are people, there are stories, shared history and experience, and most of our trust among people. So if I have to summarize in 2 key takeaways, one is that service can unite us when we do together, and when we work together, we actually grow together. That is very clear from the discussion. I would like to thank you all for sharing your time, experience, and perspective. But this is not the end of everything. We will certainly meet again on another occasion. So stay connected, stay curious, and keep building the bridges. And thank you so much for coming today. Thanks a lot.
Happy to be here. Thanks.